We have David Ziegler here, also known as Ziggy in the Aurora ReStore, and he's going to give us some tips. He is the ultimate authority and going to give us some tips on some of the questions that we always have.
One of the things I do is I typically take apart doorknobs, and there's obviously 5 or 6 different types of doorknobs that I'm looking to get the brass out of them, what I'm trying to do. This particular type basically is really easy to take apart. There's a little snap ring here. I will usually use a very small screwdriver and a larger one. The larger one I'm just going to put against the snap ring to keep it from turning while I'm working the smaller screwdriver under the snap ring. Snap ring is off. That comes off. I'm able to just pop a screwdriver into here, twist it a little bit. I got my brass. That's going to be steel or aluminum depending on the type of doorknob. Now I'm down to basically the round knob itself. The round knob is going to be mostly brass. There's a piece of die cast in here, and I guess I can do it right now. I will normally just put them to the side and I'll do a bunch of cutting all at once. And either take a hacksaw or a Sawzall, and I'll make a angle cut in here, just cutting through the brass down deep enough so that I can get a chisel under it. And just take the chisel, take what you, so that it loosens up the die cast.
So you're ending up with clean brass.
Yes. Then I'll have to put it in a vise and pop the brass off of there. Sometimes it works really easy, other times it makes it look very hard, or you have to make another cut because it's really in there hard. This one looks like I may need to make another cut.
And your other choice would be to put it in with the dirty brass as is.
No, never do that. It's easy enough to just make another cut.
But you might have a situation where you put that whole thing in dirty brass.
You could have. This There we go. And that's normally how the majority of them will come off with just one cut.
So now you've got clean brass.
Clean brass and a piece of die cast.
Okay. Here's the doorknob.
This is a lever doorknob, and there's very little brass other than on the ring itself. This particular one, again, has a snap ring in here, which I usually right-handed, so I try and work it over to that side. Take the larger screwdriver, hold the snap ring from turning, work your smaller screwdriver under the snap ring so it pops off. There's the snap ring. This should pop right off. A lot of times you can just take a screwdriver, stick it in here, turn it a little bit. You got your brass. In this case, this is a die cast. You're down to basically the lever itself, which is almost always die cast. And this little shaft here is going to be steel. And just take the chisel, pop it off. You got your little steel piece and your die cast.
Okay, looks pretty good.
A lot of controversy over what is clean brass, dirty brass, and whether it would constitute die cast or not, even though there's little brass in it. Something that looks like this is almost always 100% brass in here. This happens to be steel, and so I characterize this as dirty brass, and I segregate it. this particular lock, even though these lock mechanisms are steel, everything else is 100% brass. And again, there's so little steel in there that I would consider this dirty brass.
And it's heavy, so it's going to be worth a pretty good chunk.
Yep. This comes out of a faucet. This is brass. That's probably stainless. This is definitely steel, and this could be stainless steel here. And I found that you could either cut this off and you could call it dirty brass because there's going to be a little bit of steel in where it gets mounted to that. But I found that if you send this as dirty brass, they'll give you a dirty brass price.
And the ratio, it might depend on the ratio of steel versus brass, but anything that's got brass on it is definitely going to be worth money, so don't throw it away.
Right. Don't put it into the steel.
Right.
That's the main thing. Another type of lock mechanism, basically you can see that there is very little brass on here. Just the key lock itself, it's hard to get out of here. There's a lot of die cast around it, so I segregate these into another bucket and just send them as lock sets. And normally I will get the die cast price for that, not dirty brass, because there's so little brass in it.
Okay. So when in doubt, segregate it and talk to your recycler about seeing how you can maximize what you get paid for some of those buckets.
Yes. And if you need to segregate even further so that they...
Well, we've heard that Ziegler takes the brass out of electrical plug-ins, and we have some pretty small pieces here with a small amount of brass, but if you got the time and the expertise, then show us how to get the brass out of there, Ziegler.
Here's a typical light socket, and obviously this looks more like a Christmas light type, but normally I will just take this over to a vise, put it on a hard surface, hit it a couple times with a hammer. It makes a nice mess, and you'll end up with basically the contacts itself, which is going to be clean brass, and a couple more hits, and you should have...
You should be wearing... Oh, you have safety glasses. I should be wearing safety glasses.
Okay, I got a nice light socket.
What's that made out of?
It's going to be brass, because I've already segregated the aluminum ones from these.
Okay.
And if in doubt, you can always put it on the grinder and see that it's brass or aluminum. And of course, the little contacts here where the electrical wires attached to are brass. And so this whole thing is brass.
Okay, great.
And it's, in my mind, fairly easy to get to.
We've heard rumors that you actually pull the brass out of electrical plug-ins. Is that true?
That is very true.
Okay, and how long does that take you?
About 2 or 3 seconds.
Okay, you don't
I
have
don't
any...
have one to show you right now, but normally I'll just use this as an example. I won't pull them. Normally I'll just put the plug-in into the vise. Take my Dykes side cutters and just put them onto each of the plugs. Pop it out, pop it out,
Pop them
pop
out,
it out.
and they're clean brass.
And they're clean brass.
Okay, you heard it here first.
And then there's one more light socket that looks more, there's very little brass in it, but again, it's really easy to get to. It looks like, you know, coming from a Christmas light type of thing. Again, just putting it on a hard surface makes a nice mess. This is steel. There's one little contact in here, which is brass.
How much is that worth?
I don't know, 1/1000th of a cent. Is it worth my time? In my mind, yes.
Oh, thank you very much, Ziggy.